Hi, so today we are going to discuss about a reverse arm one-legged crow pose. The preliminary conditions or criteria required for us to get into this pose would be a stable one-leg crow at least for 15 to 20 seconds, as well as a reverse arm crow pose. The challenge to get into this pose would be the wrist, mainly because we turn the hand in a reverse manner. And as we are doing a crow with our arms facing forward, we use these fingers as brakes, which helps us to pause and press ourselves back. It helps the body not to collapse forward. So when the palms of the fingers are turned inwards, the brakes cannot be used. And that is why the center of gravity isn't supposed to be shifted as far forward as we usually do in a crow. So keeping the weight slightly more towards the center of the palm, these knuckles, rather than really shifting towards the heels. Well, in case you do not know how to get into a one-legged crow from a crow, please write down in the comments below and I will make another video for this. So, two preparatory practices. First is a one-leg crow. So I like to personally keep my knees just above the elbow, which makes the transitions easy for more advanced arm balancing poses of one-leg crow. By any means, if you are used to put up higher on the triceps, that's fine too, but that would make practices more challenging when you're doing more advanced forms. So a one-leg crow would be setting one knee up, shifting, leaning front and leading up the upper leg, holding it over here. So ensure that you're able to comfortably hold this form for around 15 to 20 seconds before you try out the reverse arm. So the most basic beginning for a reverse arm would be to really feel the rotation of the hand as the fingers are turning in. The bend of the elbows doesn't have to be so much like a crow, and the weight shifting would be slightly back, because when I tend to shift forward too much, again, I do not get the brakes from my fingers, which might lead my face to have a crash front. So for all your safety measures, in case you need to put a pillow around in front of you, do so if this is the first time you're trying it. So I would turn my hands in around 1 feet distance from my toes to the fingers. I set the knees on top of my triceps. I keep the gaze front because that's the direction of the initial move for me. And I lift one foot up first. And then I start to feel the shift towards the heel of the palm, and then I try lifting the other one up. There's a tiny bit of balancing point over here, and my fingers are doing the work because I'm keeping my weight slightly back versus going too much front. So these would be the very basic requirement before we get into the full form. The next step would be to bring one knee at the center. So keeping one knee on top of the tricep, the other knee comes at the center. And that's when the loading shifts a lot more towards one hand. The rest of the conditions remains the same as we just did in a crow, keeping the weight backwards. So rather than going from a crow, I like to set one knee at the center and then start. It feels a lot more easier and integrated to connect on those motor neurons and muscle groups to directly enter into the form. So I would set up my hand. I would set my right knee on top of the right upper arm. I'll shift front and I'll hover my left foot at the center. I'll try staying here for 10. So that would be the base of how we begin from a reverse arm crow into a reverse arm one-leg crow. Now, if you're not getting around 10 seconds approximately, do not move into the next phase of the practice, which would potentially become a lot more challenging. It loads on a lot to one side, and as we extend the leg backward, it becomes tricky because we have got to counterbalance the weight by shifting the torso slightly front. And that shift is not as powerful or as strong as we do it in a one-leg crow, because again, we do not have those fingers to create the resistance as the torso goes front. I like to keep it from the center, going just 50% up rather than going full extension. So just try keeping that 50%, pause over there and hold it for around 8 to 10 seconds. So let's do that. I set the knee up again, go back to my starting position, From there, lift, and I reach up halfway. And that's it. I want to hold here. And right now I'm just demonstrating one side, but please make sure that you're doing both sides of the practice. So now the final part, full posture. This definitely requires lots of different muscle groups. We need our arm strength, wrist stability, deltoids as we plunge forward, lots of core and obliques, and of course control and understanding of how the weight should shift front and how far back we extend the leg while we are shifting. It's just like when you are adding weight somewhere backward, you have to add weight forward. That is called the principle of counterbalance. But here the counterbalancing principle is slightly different from all the other poses where we are supposed to keep our fingers facing front, just like a peacock or a Ekapada Kundalini 2, or even just a simple arm positioned one leg crow pose. So again, repeat this many times, repeat the preliminary steps, and you shall be able to get there. So let's go for that. Everything remains the same. I set the knee up, I shift, I extend slowly with control. So I hope that you learned something new today. If you have questions regarding this practice or regarding any practices you want me to break down into different steps, it can be basic asanas or intermediate or advanced, please write down.